Hey everybody, welcome to Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. My name is Reed with Best Made Videos. We are a wedding videography company based out of West Seattle, Washington. And today I'm joined by Emily Keeney of Emily Keeney Photography. And I want to thank you so much for coming on tonight. You know, it's late on what is today, Thursday. You just celebrated the first birthday of your child. And I'm sure it's been a busy day for you as well. And so, thank you so much for making the time. I always say, especially in the summer months, wedding vendors taking the time to come on and do this really just speaks a lot to me about their, just devotion and wanting to do anything they can. So I want to thank you so much. Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are and what you do.
Well, thanks, Reed. I'm Emily Keeney, and I am a photographer. I work primarily in the Seattle area, but all over the Pacific Northwest. And I primarily shoot weddings, especially in the summer months, but I do a little bit of everything. So it's fun to kind of have a well-rounded experience throughout the whole year. So I also love to do some commercial and branding work, and then fun portraiture, of course, like all year round. But as you said, right now it's the heat of wedding season. So that's definitely my focus and where my mind and editing queue is at. So
Yeah, and so I kind of have your website on in the background and it's kind of scrolling through the slideshow. And I mean, just, obviously really beautiful images, a lot of joy. It seems like a lot of really exotic locations. How would you describe kind of your style and what do you look for? What excites you? However you want to describe it, but what do you like to photograph?
Yeah, well, I think to answer that fully, I'd have to back up just a little bit and talk about kind of my why, about why I even do this in the first place. And it really comes from a love of people and a love of connection. Both of those things are at the forefront of my thought process when I'm working. And unlike a lot of people, I didn't kind of just start off as like a 21, 22-year-old with my camera and go gung-ho for this business. I actually have a background in education and then spent a while in a leadership position with a retail brand that I helped grow this Pacific Northwest region with. So I have this really kind of unique background, but throughout all of those things was a love of people and connecting with people and helping them make meaning. And that was something that I found with photography. And I got to a place where I wasn't creating. And I think as artists, we really, if you're not creating, you're not thriving. And so I got to a place where I knew I needed to get back to that. And I found photography through that. So I'd always had an interest in it. And then it really kind of came full circle after doing some soul searching. And I knew that, I took painting classes and I loved that medium and I still enjoy it. But there was the interpersonal aspect that was missing. And what I love about photography is that it combines a love of art with a love of people. And not just making pretty pictures of people, but like really getting in there and participating with their joy and their truth on this really cool day that not many people get to be part of in that way. So it feels really special to me. And I think that that's the appreciation that goes behind it. And when I photograph my couples, it's really important to me that it is connecting to that essence of really who they are and that it feels authentic. And it really is joyful for all of us.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think it's continually undersold. At least I live in the video world, but just how much time, connection that, you're going to have with your vendors, but especially photo, all through everything, the engagement sessions, if you do that, and then just, you're with them through all these moments all day. And like, I always talk with people after, like, I almost have kind of like withdrawals afterward. 'Cause you're like, you spend this day with these people and then, you go through the photos and like, it's this weird connection that sometimes you have that I don't even know if they necessarily have or not. It's odd, right? But it is such like a personal day, and it obviously doesn't sound like you take that, lightly, that, that you're kind of honored to be a part of that, right?
Yeah, no, it's a gift. There's so many photographers, so many really great photographers that they could choose, especially in the Pacific Northwest. And so I don't take it lightly when somebody invites me into that day. and really it's more than just the day. I mean, all the planning that goes up to it, and for sure the engagement session, and just really getting to be a part of their lives. So that, on the wedding day, it feels like we're friends connecting, not just like a vendor coming to perform a service. I really hate to even say the word vendor about myself.
It's tough. No, we had the same thing on our wedding Saturday. They were asking about, I got a phone call earlier that week asking about, allergy stuff for like vendor meals. And I thought, man, if we're going to go down this route of the vendor relationship with the venue right now, I had known the groom for years. I had done video work for his old company. We got brought on, it's kind of this whole family affair. And then if we're going to be shuffled into the other room, because you certainly some more than others, but when you really do feel that connection, you certainly don't want to use the word like vendor or, make that distinction. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly.
So how like you said, it's, Seattle, and it is so, competitive, every service photography. How do you stand out, or how do you hope that you stand out? What do you hope the people that choose you kind of see in you, or your personality or your work, or kind of any combo?
Yeah, that's always the fear, right? Is like, are people finding me that should be finding me? And I kind of do think that there is a right match for every couple, to every photographer. Like every photographer really does bring something a little unique to the table. And that should align with the couple's priorities. So, it is my hope that that I'm finding those couples that will want to be found by me, and that vice versa, that relationship is happening. But, I think the first thing is, above, I don't know, it's hard to say, but there's this thing in the photography world right now that is, there's a lot of epic, there's a lot of epic and really like hyped stuff that's like big on Instagram, and there's sort of this draw that couples feel like maybe they need to have this kind of wedding, or they like need to elope on a mountaintop with like this epic view, And for me, like the most important thing, whether it's a really small wedding with, just the couple, or it's a 300 person Indian wedding, which was super fun. I just got to do one of those. The most important thing to me is that the couple is surrounded by people that they love, and that they're feeling joy. And it's authentic joy. And it's not there to put on a production necessarily. Like, I think details are really fun, and all those things are characteristic of that couple, and they've put a lot of thought into all those details. So I'm not saying they're not important, but I want their first priority to be their love, their connection, like the reason that they're having a wedding. And I hope that reads in my work. I want to read as somebody who's a contemporary photographer. So of course, like I'm paying attention to those trends, and I borrow from those trends. And some of those trends are really fun. Like mountaintops are really awesome, and I will never not love them. But also like a really simple, tiny park could be just as amazing a location. And so for me, like, I don't want the location to tell the story as much as the connection between the couples. And I received a really cool compliment from a prospective client who reached out to me, and she said that she was just drawn to the couples in my photos, and she couldn't explain why. And I think what hopefully she was seeing was that there was an authentic moment of connection happening between the two of them. And, I captured it in a way that, it was composed well. It was a beautiful photo, but really that like they could really feel the connection between that couple. The most important thing to me is that my photos read with emotion, that you can really feel them. I say that on my website, and I say that like on my Instagram, my goal is that you can really feel your photos, like with your feelings.
But isn't that great? I mean, that is such a wonderful compliment that someone could feel such a connection to that, just because of, that pure moment that you captured. I mean, I would just have to think that was a wonderful compliment to receive.
Totally. Yeah.
So how do you photograph then, day of? I mean, how do you approach that? And do you try to be real, candid with the clients, or how do you kind of handle day of stuff?
So it goes so much before that. So my background, especially with the retail leadership role that I had, we used to talk a lot about building relationships, and how important it is to not just be there necessarily representing like a brand, or representing a thing that you're trying to sell, or that you're really there with first before anything happens at all. Like you really see that person in front of you, or you see that couple in front of you, and you find some way to share common ground, and you find a way to see one another through a mutual lens, that you have a shared trust and that you feel comfortable with one another, that there's a trust built. So that kind of mentality really layers in way before the wedding day. Even it goes back to hopefully what they see like on my Instagram, or as they're kind of shopping around. Like I'm really not afraid to make a little bit of like a dork of myself. I'm definitely not trying to play off as a cool kid. Like that's never going to be my jam. And so I hope that people can see that I'm a human and I'm really dorky, and like we might try some stuff that ends up being a little weird or not working, but more often than not, something really awesome and like beautiful happens. So I hope that they can kind of see that from the beginning, and then throughout the wedding planning process, I'm pretty involved. Like it's a requirement for me to have a call with every client before we sign any papers. And because it's a huge day, it's a really important thing. And if I am going to be there doing this really big, if I'm going to be creating these images for them, I need them to trust me, and I want to trust them, and I want to make sure that we're speaking the same language and accomplishing the same thing. So that's a big piece of it too. So by the time the wedding day rolls around, I'm really leaning on the trust that I've built with them throughout the whole process. I'm available to them throughout their planning. I help them with their timeline. So they've heard my voice, and sometimes we FaceTime. So they've seen my face, they've heard my voice. And so by the time I roll up on their wedding, I don't have to start that process in that moment on this day where there's so much else going on. And I can be a familiar face to them, so that we can just get right rolling.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, people don't, it's just, time is so precious day of, and, obviously having like those connections and that pre-planning and that kind of relationship. I mean, I always kind of defer to the photographer in terms of a lot of pre-stuff. I mean, I have my stuff I go through the clients with, but for timelines or certain things, I don't like to step on too many toes, but, I work with some passive photographers and kind of planning, and not, and it's hard sometimes when it's like, well, I don't really know what's going on here. It's, it'd be nice to, because sometimes we gotta know, and it's, we got a week to go here, and we kind of got to figure this out, because, making a quick change or figuring something out ahead of time, could save valuable time on the wedding day, which I do think is so precious to have.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's a huge part of my role to make sure that their wedding day goes smoothly. And I take that really seriously. I think that planning is your best friend when it comes to not being stressed out on your wedding day.
Yeah, I was trying to find your website here, because you had where like you're all in, right? Was that, and that they hire you, that you're someone that's going to be, all in, that's right. Well, yeah. I'm missing the phrasing. I'm frantically trying to find where I was reading that, but talk about that philosophy.
So I don't know, maybe part of it is that now having had a child, I have a 1-year-old son. And it's funny, like sometimes things like that just really put things in perspective for you, and just having this little life that depends on me, and this thing that I do day in and day out, and like really nurture this relationship. For me, it just solidifies that people are what counts. Like people are what matter at the end of the day. And the relationships you make, whether it's a passing relationship that, probably won't continue on for the rest of your life, or whether it's a lifelong relationship like mine with my son, that it's really easy to get kind of consumed in like the minutia of day to day, and to worry about like, how am I being perceived on social media, or like, if I'm too busy and I want to, clients need to pay if they want to have me do their timeline or whatever. And at the end of the day, for me, it's like, these people have invited me into their most precious day. And that means a lot to me. That means a lot to me, and more than just like a paycheck, or that I get stuff to post on Instagram afterwards, or things to show, future clients, or build my website. Like those things are all realities. But really what's important to me is that, that these people have trusted me. They've trusted that I'm going to take care of them on their wedding day. Like, I'm going to take care of their memories, their legacy. Like, their photos are the last living thing really of their wedding day. And it tells the story. It's like the beginning of their story. Like, they're going to show these photos to their kids and their grandkids, and these are going to become heirlooms. So it's not, it's, I have to stay above the noise when I think about that. And that's kind of like the all-in part. It's easy to get stressed out, especially during the heat of the wedding season or when there's a lot else going on in your life. But it's really that connection with the people that I work with that keeps me doing this, both in financial sense and in like soul sense.
Yeah, when you talk about kind of the noise, just to kind of expand on that a little bit, you mean like stigmas from other photographers? Do you mean, negativity, or what do you mean kind of, because I think I know what you mean, but how do you kind of visualize that?
So I think something can happen when you're really invested in a field, or a project, when you're, so to take a step back, maybe when you're new at something, you can kind of have this distance between you and the subject and go like, wow, everything about that is so beautiful. Like, I used to take painting classes, and my teacher was like, do you just love everything you see? And I was like, yes, I love everything I see. And she was like, okay, that's a problem. Like, you need to kind of, you probably need to like hate some things in order to really know who you are or whatever. And so it's funny, like you see like that whole forest in front of you, and you're like, wow, that is a great forest. And then the further in you get, you're like, oh, I see. Okay. Gosh, this is a problem. And like, this tangly vine is always getting me. And so like, yeah, I think there's like certain things that contribute to the noise. Like, it's social media, it's, gosh, what, like what platform should I be advertising on? It's the expectations that I put on myself. It's comparing. Oh my gosh, I feel like all of us in this industry are, it's so easy to compare your work to others and to try to find what you're not doing. And yeah, so there's a lot of those little, like taxes, like all that kind of stuff too. It all adds up. And it's really easy once you're really in that field or like really in that forest to just see all those little details. So to be able to back up and it takes some intention to do that, to really come back to a place where you can see the whole purpose from a distance and see your why. You have to get kind of far away from it mentally sometimes to see your why. So I believe in like pulling back in social media sometimes, like taking a week off if that's what you need to do, or getting up and walking away from your computer. And like, what's awesome about motherhood is it's installed this opportunity for me to have that break, whether it's, because there's like something falling off of something and I need to like go catch it, or, or just like getting my kid outside and going for a walk and getting some fresh air. So that's a beautiful thing about motherhood that has helped me, I think, immensely professionally, is just to kind of get a little bit of that distance.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about kind of your history. You said you went to school for education. What was the drive behind that? What were you, curious about? What were you interested in?
Yeah. So I grew up, thinking I was just going to be a teacher. And I don't know if that's just, I'm from the Midwest. I don't know if that was just like a thing that was an expectation of me, or if it's something that I just thought that I kind of had to do. So I went through and, did an English education program in college. So I'm a certified high school English teacher. And it was actually a really beautiful experience. Working with the kids was awesome. After being in it, I realized that I didn't want to commit my career to it, that I needed to be doing something creative. So that didn't really quite pan out. But another piece that I kind of come back to, and I think, like our interests as children really do, I think, speak to us later. I don't think we have to be confined. Like, if you're a kid and you think you're going to be like a firefighter, it doesn't mean you actually have to go do that. But there's probably other things in your childhood that have like greatly informed who you're going to become. And both of my grandfathers were entrepreneurs and had their own businesses. And I spent a lot of time with my grandparents growing up. And my grandfather on my mom's side had this basement office, which was like so cool to me. Like, so many things, like neatly organized stacks. And he and I had a tradition every Saturday morning. We go out together and run his business errands. So we'd go to like the bank and to the stationery store. And so I kind of felt like I was his little mini business partner in a lot of ways. And as all grandparents' houses are, there's a lot of stuff like in closets and just like things that have been amassed over the years. And so I kind of made a habit as a young kid. I can't believe I'm like divulging this, but I would make a little office inside their little closets. And there were a couple of closets and like different bedrooms that you could kind of walk into. And I would make little offices and like create businesses and have my friends come over and they'd like work for my business. And so I think there's always been this thread of entrepreneurship that I knew I needed to follow. So that probably more than the education background as a child, at least, was telling of where I was going to go. But it takes a lot of courage to be an entrepreneur. And I don't think at 21, 20, I had the wherewithal or the experience as a professional, or the confidence and the aptitude to take it to that level. So I'm really grateful for the work experience that I had leading up to this.
If you were, I would tell you, and I'm sure if you were a 21-year-old today, you would have your own business and be going, because it seems to be to me that every other day you got a 20-year-old with a camera that's like, oh man, I'm a photographer, and it's good for you to have that, to have that knowledge and feel like you need to pursue and get some knowledge in your bag before kind of continuing on, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, if I had it my way, I would have just hit the ground running with something, but luckily I had to pay bills. I had to figure it out. So, and now I look back, I'm like, wow, yeah, I learned a lot of really valuable life lessons under the care of someone else's employment. I'm really glad I didn't have to make those mistakes while representing myself.
So where did you find yourself then after with your education degree? Where did that lead you?
So, kind of coming back to wanting to create, I was planning a wedding and also writing a blog. So I've always been interested in fashion. And so I had a little fashion blog that I was running, and I started covering, but I was also interested in like the business of fashion. So I was writing about different boutiques in the Chicagoland area and interviewing their owners. So that kind of ended up launching me into the career that I had with this retail brand. So I interviewed one of their stores, and then I ended up becoming the store manager of that store. She was going to go have a baby, and like all these stars aligned, and I ended up just kind of taking her job. And so then that was the next 6 years. I worked with this brand from my days in Chicago all the way to Seattle, went from being a store manager to being like a district manager, where I was overseeing a whole region and developing and growing people. And I loved it. I really did. The company is a wonderful company, really awesome people that I got to work with. And I found a love of leading, which I knew, like, as a person who's pursuing education, that I wanted to have some aspect of leadership in my work. But I really got to delve into that. And I think in leading others, you lead yourself a little too, and got to learn a lot about myself, a lot about growing a brand and a business, and doing so with grace. And that was really valuable. Really grateful for that time.
So then what kind of, how'd you make the leap then? What was when they kind of flipped that switch to say, hey, I'm going to, pursue this photography?
Yeah, well, there's that little tug. And, as creatives, like I think I kind of said before, like if you're an artist and you're not creating, like your body's going to tell you that you're not in a good place. And I kind of went through a depression. I had a really tough time for, quite some time, quite many months. And my aunt is a coach, and she, earlier on in my young 20s, she was like, you need to do this book. It's called The Artist's Way. You need to do this. And I was like, oh, I don't know, whatever. And, it was just always in the back of my mind, like, oh, I should do that book. I should do that book. And one day I just kind of had this really low, and my husband and I, this is before we had our baby, we decided to take just like a little weekend trip and found this little college town and went into this used bookstore, and like it was kind of like a crazy stacks everywhere, like super unorganized, but kind of a treasure trove, like there's just things everywhere. And then sitting on top of one of the stacks of books, as I turned this corner, was that book. It was The Artist's Way. I was like, oh shoot, I don't know if I'm like I don't know if I believe in fate or whatever, but I'm like, if this isn't a sign, then, I got to take this. So I did it. And if you haven't heard of The Artist's Way, it's a workbook by Julia Cameron. It's been around for forever. And it really just kind of helps you dig through your relationship with yourself as an artist and like what if you're facing a block or a barrier, like what might be causing that, like what things from your past or like your present are helping you or not helping you. And it has you do these little artist dates. So as funny as it is, like, she suggests it can be anything that you do for yourself that is just, it could be like going and buying stickers and like putting them in a book, or it can be, really random stuff. It can be painting. And so, I was painting a lot at the time, but I started picking up my camera more. So I had a DSLR that I had since college, and I'd been interested in photography since probably high school. So I had this camera that was just kind of sitting, not getting a whole lot of use. And so I started for that little artist date once a week, taking my camera out and kind of like exploring the Northwest and exploring some of the more far-flung areas and taking photos. And after doing that for a while, I felt like, okay, now I need people in them. And then that's kind of what started that's really what started my business, is I started photographing friends, family, anybody who would let me take pictures of them. And I would do that and post it and then try to share a little bit more. And then it really organically grew from there. So that was really the story.
So then what was it like kind of making the leap to say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to make this be a career?
So after I had started the business, I was gaining traction, and I was gaining traction quickly, and that was kind of fun. It was actually really energizing. It felt like that little kid, that little like 7-year-old in the closet with office supplies, like she was kind of coming back out. And I was really getting that itch to see what would happen if I gave this more of my energy, more of my time. And as it was, I wasn't able to dedicate as much time to it as I wanted to, having a full-time job. And then I think that honestly too, around that time, I became pregnant, and I was facing a decision about childcare, following the birth of my son. And it really was kind of like a moment of clarity. Like, if this is a good time for me to make a decision. And so I decided to leave my job and go full time. And, it was the best decision. It was really scary because I was walking away from, a really regular paycheck and health benefits and, predictability and respect and fun and like all kinds of good things. But there was that pull that I needed to try this, and give it all my attention. So I did. So earlier this year I went full time, and it's just been picking up since. Like, when you make room for things, they will grow. So
yeah, isn't it? It's funny how that works when it's meant to be, because it's one of those things where, yeah, you're worried about filling the time or whatever, and then if you have it to go and you're ready to hustle, you just got to be ready to go for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely work harder and more hours than I've ever worked at any other job, but it's rewarding, and I can see the direct link between my work and my growth, and that's really cool.
And obviously, like you said, with the family history of entrepreneurship, it probably wasn't a surprise to anybody that knew you, right? That maybe you would venture out to this at one point, or to try to make a leap at something.
No, and it's been pretty cool to, honestly, just to kind of share this with my grandpa. Like, I have one of the two grandparents or grandfathers is still living, and so when I go home and visit, he likes to kind of talk business with me, and it feels really good. It really feels like we can share that, and I know he's really proud. And I think it takes a lot of courage to be an entrepreneur, but when you have a support system and you know that there's people who believe in you and you can see that there's been a path of people who've done this before you in different ways, you realize that a lot of the things that you're scared of are probably like 2% of your overall vision and overall work. And but those 2% of things can really seem big and scary to you. And when you have a good network, it kind of remind you of the scale and the scope.
Yeah, it's funny to think back about the things that you used to worry about or didn't know, and it's funny just looking back over the years, like, man, whatever you used to really freak out about or be scared about. What was obviously you said you had a history with branding and having kind of that outward look, whatever. But what was the hardest part about starting your company where it's you, it's your name, you're the forefront, it's your work. What was the hardest part about that?
Yeah. I think the first thing is at first when you're starting, you kind of want to be everything. And you see all of this talent and you see all of this experience. And you think, okay, I got to chase all that. I've got to go do all of that. I'm going to be all of that. And at the beginning, it's hard because you can't set out and say, this is going to be my really strong brand voice. Like, I'm just starting a business and this is my brand voice. Like, man, if you can start out with that kind of confidence and knowledge, then that's so great. But for me, that wasn't the case. I set out and I emulated a lot of different styles. My editing evolved a lot. My shooting approach evolved a lot. It continues to evolve. I think something I'm working on is saying, I don't need to do these things to be a good photographer. And just kind of reflect a lot. Like, what am I holding on to? What am I doing that I'm in a habit of doing, but isn't necessarily fulfilling my definition of what a good photographer is? And I think it's important to kind of release some of that baggage as you go along. So that's probably been one of the bigger challenges. And the other one is just, it's so hard to see your own work. You have so much of yourself in it and so much, emotions. Like, when I'm in a season of creating something, like, I'm taking things that have happened in my life and that's influencing my work. And so it's so much more than just a picture. It sounds like, ooh, and deep to say that, but it really is for me. I give a lot of myself back to my work. And so it's hard to be really, critical and kind, but really honest with yourself about, what work is serving me and what work is really carrying out this brand that I've created, and what do I need to let go of? And like, it could be a really great photo, but it might not be the direction that I'm going. And so it's learning to kind of calm myself down, and let there be more space for the things that are, moving me forward and, are going to be my areas of focus.
Yeah, it's the comparison with others, and it's so hard, and I still struggle with it, all the time. And just because there's so much talent and people doing crazy stuff, and we just delivered a wedding like last week or whatever, and the same planner had another wedding, and I see their video and she posts it, and they're waiting on ours, and it's like the best thing ever. And I'm just like, I'm like, oh my God, because I'm like, I see this stuff and I'm blown away, and I'm like, that's not really our style. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just feel, and I've been doing this a while, and I just feel so inadequate. And then, I share our video with our couple, and they're just like, this is exactly what we wanted, exactly what we hired you for, left great reviews. And so, but it is hard that, like, wanting to, you see other things or and doubting, and especially with visual fields like photography too, where it is easier to compare. How do you do you just shut that off and just, like you said, kind of step away, or how do you kind of combat that?
Well, if I had it 100% figured out, I'd be selling that answer. But the things that help me definitely are taking social media breaks, because the frequency with which we're seeing images, especially on Instagram, just by scrolling. I wonder how many images we see in a day, especially those of us who are working in this field, and we're probably checking social media a little more than just like the everyday person. So really, what you see really does influence you, and it influences the way that you get ready to shoot. Like things that I've seen live in the back of your head. Like subconsciously, all those images are still there. And they're informing the way that you approach your work. And that can be a good thing, and it can be a bad thing, because sometimes it fills your head with all of this information, and there's like lots of competing voices for like your art director, like your little inner art director. There can be like lots of competing voices for that role. So stepping back from social media definitely helps kind of just calm the water a little for me. And something I've been doing lately is kind of enrolling myself a little bit in like the school of photographers who came before me and studying their work, and like actually like reading books, not learning it all on a screen, like holding images in my hands and like reading the words of these photographers who have been, masters in their field, and who on maybe like now on social media, like probably wouldn't have like the crazy cult following that, some of these mega influencer photographers do. And it's really inspiring to see just how clear their voice is, and just to be inspired by that work, and just to kind of continually have a rotating stimulus, and try to go into museums and like going to see art, and not just photography. Like you can learn a lot about composition, and color, and human experience from a lot of different art mediums. So I try to let those things influence my work as much as I can, and keeping those things in check.
That's funny. Did you see that? Did you see that movie Once that came out this year, the Beatles movie?
I didn't. I feel like I'm behind the times.
Well, you have a child, so it's yeah. But the short story, not giving anything away, but the guy wakes up, the Beatles don't exist, but he's got all the Beatles songs, and so he, is trying to become famous writing the Beatles songs, and so he's playing. Just when you were talking about, these old, school like great photographers, kind of being lost today, he's trying to play "Let It Be" for his parents, like anybody, like, oh hey mom and dad, come here, let me show you, what I've been working on upstairs, and like they could not be bothered less to hear it, right? And he's sitting there, it's like you're watching the Sistine Chapel be painted, and you're just not realizing that this is like this work of art. But it's like you said, with just Instagram and the number of images, and nowadays, and people and attention spans, and where all these like great photographers are, where you're trying to like take the time to appreciate that kind of stuff, where it might totally be lost nowadays, where it's just who reads a book anymore, who takes the time, even like printing images. We just had another podcast earlier today, guest, she does, letterpress printing, and, having these tangible things. I mean, a lot of these things are kind of going away, or attentions are being kind of shifted,
Mm-hmm. It's hard to know when you're being a curmudgeon or when you're being an artist with those things.
That's awesome. What's your favorite thing to shoot kind of in a wedding day? What's your favorite moment, or, collection of moments? But what really gets you excited?
I was just writing about this. So it used to be couples portraits, like, duh, like you have creative control, and you can pick the lighting, and you can pick the mood, and you have this time. And, that used to be my absolute favorite. And I mean, I think that is still a very important part of the day, because those photos are really the ones that end up getting printed and being put on a wall and like passed down and stuff. But the honest to goodness favorite thing for me is kind of when like nothing is going on. It's like the in-between stuff. Like, I mean, speeches are awesome because you get these great reactions from people, and they have no idea you're taking their photo, and they can just be in the throes of really remembering something beautiful that this, groomsman or father of the bride is saying, and being able to kind of participate and witness that sentiment of theirs is really something special. And then to capture it in a frame, like sometimes I'm like, oh crap, like keep shooting, like don't just like take this in. So it's kind of those in between things, or as people are getting ready to sit down for dinner, or as people are milling around, waiting for the ceremony or waiting for the reception, and really it's after it's really after the ceremony, because something happens, like this lead curtain lifts and everything just gets easier. And, you know, the couple's like, whew, okay, now we can just go hang out with our family. And, you know, one of my favorite photos I've taken, or kind of like series that I've taken this summer, was at a wedding I shot on Whidbey Island. And I was trying to get the bride over to this far edge of the property for family photos. And like everyone was over there. And, you know, you're trying to wrangle all these people, and I'm thinking of the timeline and everything. And then she, you know, we kind of walked past her grandma and her aunt, and they were just kind of standing off to the side. And it's the first time her grandma's seen her that day. And she just she just stops and like I can only imitate it with like that sound, you know. She just goes like, like just, I can't even handle how beautiful this is and how beautiful you are. And just kind of puts her hands down on her lap and bends over and just looks at the bride. And I had the wherewithal to like actually snap that moment, you know, and not just take it in. And just the series that kind of came after that of like them embracing and like they're both kind of tearing up, and it was just so beautiful. And, you know, those to me are the moments that are like, those are my like trophy moments. Like that's the most important to me, is somebody's looking through their gallery, that they see that and remember that moment and like remember that person. And now, you know, having been married for 6 years, I kind of look back at our wedding photos, and there's people who are no longer with us. And it's really special to me to have not just post photos with them, but like actual photos of me like living in this event, like in this space with them, where I didn't even necessarily know that the camera was on me. So there's a balance in my work between leading the couple and, you know, helping move the timeline along and making sure that everyone's looking their best in photos. And then there's like the polar opposite, where I am just like this little fly on the wall, like I'm a little speck of grass in the field. I'm just trying to witness this, this day of great meaning for all these people. And it's not about me. Oh my God, it's not about me. You know, to be able to witness this day and to capture it in images is a gift, and it's not about me. And I just wish that there was a little bit more of that spirit, or at least in what like we're all choosing to post.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, because that's definitely not like the sexy stuff for Instagram, you know. And I was having a conversation the other day with a photographer, because I'll snap just a couple stills just so I have them to post for like, you know, the thumbnail video, or I can post one on Instagram. But I said, you know, like the video, like the things that we really focus on, like aren't that sexy Instagram 60-second kind of thing, you know. And I finally have kind of tried to realize that over the years, of just like what is deemed, like you said, kind of that sexy whatever to post, versus like what our clients appreciate, which I guess ultimately is way more important than, you know, these likes or whatever, this nebulous stuff out there. But like these moments, you know, that you're capturing, like, is that the sexiest thing to post on whatever? Like, no, but like I'm sure that she'll cherish that photo forever, you know,
Yeah.
and have that moment way after. And so it is like this balance of like, well, what's the point here, right? So what do we focus on?
Yeah. And it's hard, because I think that our clients, at least the ones who are kind of in the world of social media a little more, are kind of maybe holding their wedding up to that trendy, you know, level of expectation too. Like they might be looking for some of those like big loud moments in their wedding galleries too, just because they have to keep up with like the trend and keep up with the Joneses. And so, you know, I hope that if in the moment that photo with grandma didn't mean the world to her, that in 5 years that it will. And so there's that too, is I'm banking on like the future, and their interpretation of that day in the future. It's really weird how going through your own wedding, you know, all I did was like think about like, God, I should have done this different. And I was really critical of kind of every decision. And, you know, and now it's years later, when all those details like do not matter. And a lot of that stuff is like, frankly, out of style now. You know, it's those other photos that are like the treasures to me. So I have to have a little foresight with that and try to let my couples know, like, yeah, we're going to make some really beautiful portraits, but like, here's also what you're going to get with me.
That's awesome. Before I let you go here, or wind you down a little bit, what do you wish more people knew about you? And it could be, you as the photographer, it could be you as the business owner, it could be you as the person, the mother, wife, however. But what do you just wish you could tell more people, or you wish more people knew?
Hmm.
I know that's tough.
Well,
But like first, first jump to your head.
well, I guess my thing that I would say is that if you have in your heart something that you want to do, that you should do it, and I think that it's so much simpler said than done. And maybe it's about me, like, I was not like a super confident kid. Like, I wasn't a popular kid. I didn't, thrive in like sports or whatever. Not really until like high school, I guess. But I didn't just like have this confidence all the time, and I think that, you see these people who are running these businesses and you think, gosh, they're so confident, and just knowing like that there's a journey that goes into that, and you have to just let go of so many expectations of what you're not going to be, and let go of this perfection. And the more you can embrace yourself in like the good and the bad ways, and what you can offer the world is so great. And I think that I wish more people went after their dreams. And whatever that looks like, whether it's providing more resources to kids in like underdeveloped areas, or in higher need areas, or just letting kids know that we believe in them, like, or whatever it is. But it does start early, and I think it's really important to give like younger generations that confidence of, you don't have to just follow this track and like go major in this thing, like go work at a corporation if you don't want to do that. Like you can create your own reality, and there's so many different ways to do it. And especially when it comes to being a creative person, there were as many voices that were really encouraging to me growing up, encouraging me to do these creative endeavors. There were also lots of voices of warning, and I know it comes from a place of love. But, like, if you want to be an artist, you got to put food on the table. Like, art's the first thing to go, and when the economy's down, like stuff like that. And, it was voices of love that wanted the best for me. But, no decision that you make is like 100% solid or safe. Like the company that you work for could lay off half of its, people, or whatever could go on. So really nothing is as secure as it seems. And working for yourself, at least you like the boss and that you are in control of your growth. And so especially for people who are feeling like they want to do something creative, I say find a mentor, do something soul searching, like commit to yourself, and don't stop until you've found something that you love. And it's okay if you change your mind and pursue something else along the way. But in the pursuit of yourself, like you will always find yourself. So I just wish more people would maybe commit to that process.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I mean, I've filmed a lot of like motivational speakers, in my time, and some good and some bad. I mean, Tony Robbins was here 2 years ago. I mean, we, filmed him, and I, do I think that every person that comes and pays to, to be gifted a packet that's going to change their life, I don't know, but I do think, like you said, if you have that belief in yourself, I do think there's a lot there, and I do think that there's a lot of just working hard. And I've always said that if you work hard enough, it's something that you're good at. I do think eventually something's going to come of it. And whether it's that thing succeeding or you figuring something else out that spawned off of that's even better or whatever. But I echo those sentiments. I think that's a wonderful, note to end on. And I think that's a really valuable lesson.
Awesome. Yeah.
Good job. You killed it.
Well, thank you. It was a lot of fun.
No, I mean, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, I think, really, really insightful stuff, really great conversation, and photography and kind of the whole gamut. If people want to learn more about you and your photography and your style and what you do and your family and everything, where would you have them check out?
So, obviously my website, emilykeeney.com, is, the main place to go, but then definitely follow me on Instagram at Emily Ann with an E Keeney. I'm on there, and that's kind of where I show a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, and I story a ton. So I'm always, doing behind the scenes stuff and showing what my baby is up to and like what I'm, my life. I'm pretty much an open book. I'd love to connect with anybody.
Well, perfect. Well, thank you so much again. And, like I said, taking the time and just wedding season and schedules are crazy. And so I always do appreciate the people taking the time to come on and, talk about themselves and do a little, whatever this is. It's appreciated.
It's a cool project. I appreciate you letting me into it.
Of course. If you're like Emily and you're interested in coming on the podcast and sharing your story, you can go to www.bestmadevideos.com/podcast guest. That's a great, easy link to the questionnaire to fill out, to submit, to kind of get in the system and hopefully get things rolling. And I just want to thank you again. This has been another episode of Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. Check back next week for another Wedding Better interview. Thanks so much.